be reduced to a few isolated torches, sputtering in a dark universe.
He raised no protest when the Diet of Speyer in 1529 passed the cruel decree that the Anabaptists be executed by fire and sword without a previous hearing before the spiritual judges. As a result of that decree, a number of Anabaptists in Saxony were put to death. Luther's followers, theologians of Wittenberg, gave their judgment to the elector John Frederick in favor of putting the Anabaptists to death. Luther approved of this judgment under his own name, adding that it was cruel to punish them by the sword, but more cruel that they should damn the ministry of the word and suppress the true doctrine. Luther declared, "Whoever teaches differently from what I have taught, he condemns God and must be a child of hell." Another father of Protestantism, Ulrich Zwingli, is the third reformer after Luther and Calvin. He became the father of Zwinglianism, a Protestant movement that would later merge with Calvinism. In the 1520s, Zwingli built his theocracy in Zurich, Switzerland.
Церковь и государство он тоже воспринимал как душу и тело. Он подобен Кальвину в этом отношении. Он отстаивал идеи теократии, полагал, что с помощью закона можно создать вот такое вот общество, построенное на Слове Божьем.
Church in Zurich was made official. Ulrich Zwingli became a city pastor and started to impose Protestant faith. He counseled his Protestant brothers the forcible introduction of Protestantism into the neutral territories and the forest cantons. He advised the exclusion of Roman Catholics from the Reformed cantons and violent measures against Anabaptists and other dissenters. In the 1520s and 1530s, Zwingli's theocratical regime beheaded, drowned, and burned Anabaptist leaders. By 1535, the Anabaptist movement in Zurich had been completely suppressed. Anabaptist leaders Jan Denk and Ludwig Hetzer denounced Zwingli as being worse than the Pope. Like Zwingli, John Calvin, the father of the Calvinist movement in Protestantism, created a theocratical union of church and state in Geneva.
Calvin believed that the Great Commission was the responsibility of Christian governments, not the church.
Calvin justified it by his interpretation of an Old Testament verse in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 23, insisting that kings should be the nursing fathers and their queens the nursing mothers of the Church of Christ. He built his theocracy on the Old Testament. He referred to the law of Moses and to the kings of Israel. He pled for the right and duty of the Christian magistrate to punish heretics by death. He believed that offenses against the Church are offenses against the state, and vice versa, and deserve punishment by fines, imprisonment, exile, and, if necessary, by death. Calvin agreed with Augustine in the interpretation of the parabolic words, constrain them to come in. So he didn't persuade Geneva to become Calvinistic, but constrained it. He tried to build in Geneva Augustine's city of God. The whole historical picture of apostate movements actually boils down to their endeavor to dominate and to persecute, though Christ warned of a strict punishment for that. If the servant whom his Lord shall make ruler over his household, to give them their portion of meat in due season, say in his heart, My Lord delays his coming, and shall begin to beat the manservants and maidens, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken. The Lord of that servant will come at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him in sunder, and will appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. The Protestant would adopt not only their spiritual father Augustine's justifications for beating and persecuting dissenters, but also his doctrine of predestination. It was born out of Augustine's justifications for the Inquisition. His belief in God compelling to salvation by force and driving man to the wedding supper by violence led to his doctrine of irresistible grace. It teaches that God will always achieve the fulfillment of his will by any means. But when Augustine ran into biblical examples when people could resist God's will, he tried to solve this contradiction by assuming that it's not God's will to save all men. That's why he is not persistent in stating some of them. The doctrine of irresistible grace gives birth to the doctrine of unconditional election or predestination. It teaches that God chose beforehand who would be saved and damned the rest to perdition. If God chose only some men to be saved, then Christ must have died for them only. Thus Augustine got the doctrine of limited atonement. It's not man to decide whether he will be chosen or not. It's God's wish to choose him before the foundation of the world to be among the redeemed, or not to choose. By Augustine's logic, it's God's choice that determines everything, so man's will and faith can do nothing about it. Thus Augustine came up with the doctrine of total depravity of man. It teaches that man is unable to make choices and even unable to believe in order to be saved. Man has no free will at all. He is able either to go to perdition or to be forced by God to salvation against his will. If any of the chosen can't help being saved by God and is unable to resist his will, so there is no sin he can do to cause him to backslide and lose his salvation. This doctrine of perseverance of the saints would also be known as once saved, always saved. The fathers of Protestantism would be situated with these teachings of Augustine. A Pentecostal historian assures that Martin Luther and many other Protestants would firmly hold to the doctrine of predestination. John Calvin would develop his teaching and give it his name. In 1618, the Synod of Dort set forth the 5 doctrines of Augustine on These are the 5 pillars holding Calvinism today.
These 5 points are at the very heart of how we understand God and sin and grace and atonement and salvation.
According to Calvinist Robert Charles Sproul, Augustinianism is now called Calvinism or Reformed theology.
Reformed is equal to Calvinism.
Modern-day Calvinists are absorbed in Augustine's works.
I've learned most of what I've learned from Edwards and Augustine and people like that.
They quote Augustine generously to support their teaching.
Как Августин писал,
St. Augustine said,
They recommend Augustine's works.
one habit for 2012, it would be that all of you would read Augustine's Confessions.
They praise the father of the Catholic Inquisition to the skies.
He is one of the most influential human beings that have ever walked the planet, both in the church and outside the church.
What do the 5 points of Calvinism really mean? How are they presented by modern-day Calvinists? Do they teach what the Gospel of Christ teaches?